hey, guess what? You're listening to Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. Today is currently Saturday, November 24th, 2018. Hope you all ate plenty of turkey and got filled up. And now that your body's nice and filled and gluttonous, get ready for some good information. But first, a word from somebody who actually knows what the Pledge of Allegiance is.
Well, I remember a teacher that I had. Now, I went through the seventh grade. I went to the seventh grade. And I left home when I was 10 years old because I was hungry. And I used to, this is true. I work in the summer and I go to school in the winter. But I had this one teacher. He was the principal of the Harrison School in Vincennes, Indiana. To me, this was the greatest teacher, a real sage of my time, anyhow. He had such wisdom. And we were all reciting the Pledge of Allegiance one day. And he walked over, this little old teacher. Mr. Laswell was his name. Mr. Laswell. And he says, he says, I've been listening to you boys and girls recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester. And it seems as though it's becoming monotonous to you. If I may I recite it and try to explain to you the meaning of each word. I, me, an individual, a committee of one, pledge, dedicate all of my worldly goods to give without self-pity, allegiance, my love and my devotion to the flag, our standard, Old Glory, a symbol of freedom. Wherever she waves, there's respect, because your loyalty has given her a dignity that shouts freedom is everybody's job. United. That means that we have all come together. States, individual communities that have united into 48 great states. 48 individual communities with pride and dignity and purpose. All divided with imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common purpose, and that's love for country. And to the republic, a state in which sovereign power is invested in representatives chosen by the people to govern. And government is the people, and it's from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people, for which it stands. One nation, meaning so blessed by God, indivisible, incapable of being divided, with liberty, which is freedom, the right of power to live one's own life without threats, fear, or some sort of retaliation. And justice, the principle or qualities of dealing fairly with others. For all, which means, boys and girls, it's as much your country as it is mine. And now, boys and girls, let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance, under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that is a prayer and that would be eliminated from schools too?
All right there. Now you guys can hear from Red Skelton. He's gone. He's deceased, as far as I know. And but he grew up without the two extra states, aka Alaska and Hawaii, and without those two extra words in the Pledge of Allegiance, under God. This is a country built on religious freedom, not just one religion is in charge of it. Ed,
That's
you
true.
take it away.
Well, I want to get into. We're going to get into the other one too, because I would like to do that other one. If we do that with Reagan, I want to get into that one because being out in the 14th Amendment, what's going on.
Oh.
But I want people to comprehend when he's talking to 48 states, Alaska and Hawaii came into the Union under the corporation administrative rule that was filed and registered 1925 under the corporation structure. And you need to look this up. And the last one, it was done in Florida. So Florida had a 99, basically, lease for the name corporation, United States Inc. And that is the United States Inc. of the Bankruptcy Act, too. Because when the banks went bankrupt, that was the British government who went bankrupt. Because the United States Incorporation is the British government, not we the people, not the United States of we the people. See, this is one thing that people are starting to learn and pay attention. And I'm glad to see a lot of this starting to develop today. And that is the one thing that we need to keep this going with the education on this stuff so people get to know what a lawful bloodline Native American is versus a legal citizen or any citizen. And if you're elected a public employee and your family's been on this soil for over 100 years, 200 years, sorry, even the law says when you become a public servant, you'll give up your constitutional rights and turn them into a privilege. And until you retire or until you leave the government structure, you have to refile your rights. And if you don't refile your rights, it's the same thing as like if you get convicted of a felony, I don't care what felony it is, and the people need to learn the felony laws and the structure of what the Constitution says on a real felony compared to what we're lied to daily in the fantasy of all these nuts we've got out here. But if you got a felony, you've done your time. 60 days after your time, you can file for your rights if you haven't had any issue. You just file. You get all your rights installed. Okay, that's where people don't get it. They keep going, oh, you have to have a judge. You have to do this. The judge is not the court. And I've been putting that up all week, getting that out, explaining that with the bankruptcy fraud, dealing with how these things work to the general public. Because if we don't sit there and protect the bloodline of the 48 states, there is no world. There's no future because everybody in the world goes to us. We, the people, keep going after us to prove that we have rights. Right? And we prove that we do have rights. We believe in the Constitution and the treaties that gave us rights. Remember, the treaties with the natives, with the Constitution, gave you and me our rights if you're lawful bloodline native versus a citizen. Citizen is a corporation member. And unless it's a large C and you specify it. That's why what's going on right now, if you don't file your affidavit and file to prove if you're lawful or legal, you could be in a detention center. I think they're calling them FEMA camps, or some of the old Walmart stores that are coming up. Because this is the point. We want them to determine who's lawful and legal in the country. We want to know who is the ones that have a right to be here and the ones who don't. And we do have a right to know who the criminals are, and the real criminals need to be shipped out of this country immediately. How do you think we're going to protect this? I mean, and it's like if you pay attention to what's going on in your government, because we the people are the government, all right, you pay attention to you in your government. If you don't start standing up and producing these reality points and educating your children and the others around you on this stuff, we're not going to have a future. But we have a future. People are listening. We're seeing more and more people waking up and more people starting to realize it's called personal responsibility and liability. if you're not personally responsible for your actions, okay, how do you expect to take care of your men's and your means? So we have a lot of stuff that people are learning and getting out there. And this is the one thing, when people have comments, if somebody don't know it, we need to find the answer. We need to bring it up. If it's not this week, next week, we got to find the answers to some of these other questions that other people have. And so, I mean, I've been putting up a lot of stuff here recently in the last few days, especially dealing with the amendment, Fifth Amendment, violation of Constitution. And people don't realize that if you pay income tax, it's a violation of your Fifth Amendment, and I've proven and putting up the actual law. So this way you can't say it's hearsay, and nobody can sit there and say, well, Ed, you know, they wrote it, I quote it. It's that simple. And this is what we've got to do, is pass this information on. And when we have the issues with elected and public servants, because if you have a representative, isn't the representative supposed to represent you in court even with a traffic ticket? Think about it. Where's the representative representing you? See, these are the things that people don't get. And life is this simple. And we do have life this simple. But if we don't start doing more and more and getting more and more out there, we are seeing more and more people educating. And the one thing is, I have to give Rob Ryder a lot of credit. I mean, him and the what is that? Hang on a second. I had so many people. I want to give some credit tonight, because we got a lot of people that is bringing out a lot of really good news, a lot of good sites, a lot of good facts. Let me get this other one sent up to this fire department, because see, we want to start getting all these gurus that all of us are working with on these things. You know, now we're trying to start putting them all together so we can start putting it under, basically not under one roof, but everybody could get their words out, their thoughts, their structures. And that's what we need to get out. And we cannot forget about the United Constitution radio show. And that is the one thing that these men and women are getting out information. I got several information I want to bring out, but I'm waiting for my computer to cut up because I had a little list I put together. I'm trying to get it to catch up here. So that way when we're getting this stuff out, it comes out so people can get the actual facts instead of the administrative rules confused. And we're dealing with that with some people right now on a couple court cases, and this is the one thing, it shouldn't be confusing when you read it. It's simple when you read the stuff. And like I said, Rob Ryder just put out a new video that I'm putting out right now dealing with how to deal with your public servants. And this is where I've been telling people, if you don't put your affidavit in and set yourself so that way you know if you're lawful or legal. Okay, because when they start doing enforcement and everybody's going, yeah, martial law, everybody's going, if we end up in martial law, you have to realize, folks, if you file your affidavit and prove you're lawful and you file it and you have to, remember, I'm going to explain to you where you have to do it so it's done lawfully and legally. You have to make sure it's posted in the county commissioner meeting rooms. You have to make sure the county commissioners get served it. You have to make sure the local police department gets served it and it's hanging in the public bulletin board of that city hall, or the city council gets a copy, the city mayor gets a copy, and especially the city corporation attorney. Remember, these are all corporate men and women. They have to know your standings. So if something does happen, they have to know that either you're going to back them up or if you're not, okay? And if you're a lawful native, you don't have to back them up. But if you want to back them up in certain circumstances, you know, I wouldn't have an issue backing some of the circumstances so long as they're honoring their oath of servitude. When they're honoring their oath of servitude and working in honor, they should have honor given to these men and women. And that's the one thing that we want to make sure, that these men and women do comprehend and get some of this honor. that they deserve, because we do have men and women out there, elected and public employees, that are actually doing the right things, doing the real structure, protecting our rights, protecting your children's rights, our rights. But then we got a lot out there that are overstepping their bounds and, not doing anything. And those are the men and women we need to start standing up against, and those are the ones we need to start putting the indictments in. So when it comes to like the 14th Amendment, and everybody's waking up and realizing the 14th Amendment was never ratified, it was administratively passed. That was part of the Vatican contract that went through that started that would be called the American Law School. 1878, August 27th, 1879, August 27th, the American Law School started. Okay, that was from England, and their foundation states that they are British accreditation. Now, this started coming out in the mainstream media. A lot of people didn't like to have that being brought out, but it's there, maritime law. So we know we have two structures in our court systems. We know we have a maritime system called the Gold Fringe Flag. Anything that is even flying the so-called American flag that's without a gold fringe, that's still the war flag. Because without the gold fringe, that is the war flag that did genocide and committed mass suicides on the native men and women of this country. We are not a country of immigrants. We are a country that has been invaded in so many ways, domestic and foreign. We are not a country of immigration. Democracy would like you to think so. That's the only reason how they are employed. Donald Trump came out and stated that, and you people need to stand up and realize when he stated that what he meant. Because he's sitting there telling you the truth of what's going on here, and it comes to we the people that have to do this. So when it comes to these men and women that are stealing our children for DHS, for personal and financial gain, we have to file the criminal charges. We're the one that has to do it because the police department cannot file criminal charges. The district attorney cannot file criminal charges. The judge cannot file criminal charges. The DHS worker cannot file criminal charges. They get away with it because, and then you call that government corruption. Well, they get away with it because nobody else is filing it, and there are people out there abusing their lawful and legal positions. Yes. How do we solve these issues? Simple. Write the criminal charges. Even Donald Trump came out and said that in the media recently. So, and that's the one thing that if you're listening to what's going on, a lot of these men and women are speaking up. A lot of the work that not only I have done, but a lot of the men and women who listen to this and who I talk to around that we pass information back and forth all the time. We know what's going on. We've seen how people are paying attention and they're starting to combinationally getting this stuff. And that's why when it comes to the stuff that we've been misinformed about when they keep calling it a democracy. Well, they've been trying to shove that road down our throats for 200 years, trying to convince us to go to war. Still to go to war. And so that's why the one thing is that I'm going to start doing some stuff here for the show here. I'm going to start doing a list, and then I realized I have to come together with a protest package so that way people get to know who's lawful and legal when they're protesting, who's doing it lawfully and legally. So it is putting this stuff together like we're all doing, and it is a lot of hard work, but we have to do it. And the blessing point about it is we can do it. And passing the information back and forth is what we need to do as well. And that's the main thing, passing the information back and forth. So long as we're keeping this information back and forth going, especially what's going on with the bankruptcy fraud, what's going on with what they're doing, still stealing kids and human trafficking. Well, there's templates that are up there now. So, and you have to file these charges. Have you been kidnapped and held for ransom? You know, dealing with your vehicle being kidnapped and stolen for personal and financial gain. So you have to write these criminal charges up, and this is the point that people are getting it. Because you are the injured party. You are the Title 18 3771 corpus delicti. And remember the main thing, if you write any complaint for the police department, fire department, whatever, and if you're not writing an affidavit, you're using their form, always put in, if you were injured, you're the corpus delicti. If you do not even put that even in their corporation paperwork, you're not the corpus delicti, you're still the strawman account, dead body. And you'll have all these people say, that doesn't matter. Well, it really does, folks. Executive Order 2040, and that was even William Jefferson's Clinton's order that made us all slaves under the birth certificate insurance bond, that when he signed the payee structure over the Queen of England, Executive Order 1776 or 1778, one of those two. And when he signed over the employee structure over to the corporation called the British government, he could only sign the employee structure. He cannot sign over our rights to that at all. There's no way he could have signed our rights over. That's why the employee structure that we got signed over the Queen, because it was a corporation. Because Social Security, despite what all these other people say out there, is a private corporation, not a government agency. I've already proven it. I've already got the facts up on the website. We've got the other structures to prove more than that with the IMF fraud that people are going along with dealing with the banks. So, I mean, we've got the evidence of sitting back, watching how all this stuff is being put together, seeing that, you know, I have so much fun with these men and women when they keep filing their paperwork and they're not getting the separation of the structure dealing with the large C, small c citizenship. They're still calling themselves citizens. They write it in small stuff. They're taking credit for stuff they shouldn't be taking credit for. And it's just amazing. It truly is amazing on the structure of what's going on here. And I always find it very stunning. You know, and I mean, I've been putting stuff up, and like what's going on with Red Skelton just said, we are 48 states. Now, we got a lot of stuff around Facebook sites. Everybody's, 50 states. Folks, we are not 50 states. We are 50 states in a corporation structure. And if you want to claim you're a state national or nationalism or whatever, remember, nationalism goes back to the British government. That goes back to the United Nations, the EU. Has nothing to do with we the people. So once you start realizing and read real history and start looking and investigating these facts out to prove this structure, because we have to prove it to the children. The children need to know the truth growing up of what the finances are. Okay, we know it's a ghost finance. We know how all that structure is a ghost finance. But how do we solve some of these issues? So we do have structures how we can solve issues, and that's the whole point we need to work on. And the issue is filing and knowing if you're lawful versus legal. Claiming your bloodline. Learning how to set up your assets called your property. And knowing when you have a title from a county or you're paying property taxes, the county owns your property unless you file against it. And you want to file and ask them to prove it. Now, I've got templates up. I'm getting ready. I'm trying to get the other paperwork finished so I can go after them on the other account that I'm working on. Because I've got things that I'm working on to prove this stuff because, I'm fighting them myself. But as I'm fighting them, I'm educating myself as well as bringing this stuff forward to you about what's working and what's not. Because all these other men and women out there we've been dealing with for years, these so-called gurus, and everybody, send us money, send us money. Well, I'm like most people. I'm disabled. I'm broke. I can't send people money. I ain't got money. Right now I'm dealing with some major medical and issues and some other stuff that I don't have resources for. So, I'm the same boat with some of these other people. All right, but there's other ways that we can work this out. When you see somebody puts an affidavit out there, pass it around. Do the research. Let's see who's telling the truth when they're writing these affidavits. Let's find out the truth of the circumstances of the men and women involved in these things. Because the men and women want us to pass their information around, we have to verify it, prove it, because we cannot be involved in hearsay circumstances because we don't want liability. I don't want liability for nobody. I don't take liability for nobody. And neither should you. When it comes down to it, neither should you. And you should not, nobody should be putting themselves in these positions. And so it is putting these things together so we knew who's working with each other and how to protect one another. And the main thing right now that I know is working, you can go new.org and tracks, type me in. You can see what I've put up with my filings that's been in the newspapers and all this stuff with my property, my soil. You know, and so that way you can use whatever it is. You have to write your own structure. You have to use your own words. You have to prove your own. But once you prove your own, then you got grounds to stand up when you go to court. And remember, Article 1, Section 10, knowing lawful and legal. That's what it really comes down to, knowing lawful and legal. So, and that's the other point. We've got to protect our borders. People are not getting this. You know, I mean, like the state of Oregon supposedly passed an administrative rule to open up the borders and let all these people come in. They can't do it. There's no vote. They can't go against the Constitution. They're going against the Constitution, and they're saying that, oh, we passed it so, you know, we have these cities protected. They can't do it. It takes 2/3 of the voters. 27% is not a legal vote. 27% of the voters are all elected and public servants. No jurisdiction. You know, hearsay evidence can't be in office. So there's a lot of that, and that's in some of my filings that we're got up right now. But that's the point. That's the whole point here. We all got to start standing up and stop arguing religion crap. Let's stay away from religion. Let's start talking the Constitution. The Constitution gives you rights. Religion doesn't give you nothing. Oh, I can't say that. It gives you a tax write-off, but that's it. Otherwise, there's nothing there in religion beside a tax write-off. So we have solutions. We want to get it out. I want to get that other audio played with Reagan, because the reason why we're bringing some of this stuff up is to bring us back to the point we know what the truth is. I mean, there's another point that people got to pay attention. There's this other thing called Prager University, you know, and now everybody's going about God and all this stuff. Well, people are waking up, and God and science is not God. Science is knowing what the dirt soil is, knowing when the animal drops his load, when an animal does something. That's science, you know. And if you spell God backwards, isn't it a dog? See, there's a lot of things that we could go on about different things, but how do you want to go about it? I'd much rather start putting our rights in place, and so we can start making sure that you have the right to protect your family. You know, they're arguing about the gun, you know, stand your right law in Florida right now, what the Young Turks are trying to do. Those Young Turk Corporation on YouTube and stuff. For the last several years, I try to do talk shows with them, or I've put many challenges out to them. But they don't. They're paid for by the Democratic Party, the DNC. They're owned and paid for by the structure and everything about them is Hillary Clinton and the DNC. So you got to pay attention. Who's paying who? Who's running whose party? Who's paying these employees on Facebook? Who's paying these employees on YouTube? And the one thing we can say, and we don't get paid here. You know, if anybody would like to donate, we could always give some out numbers. You know, you can always call, you know, water, electricity bill. You know, you can always pay that for us. See, there's other ways of doing it instead of sitting there asking for a handout. If people have kindness, that's where I always say, I go by people's kindness. People show it. I don't see anything else, so I don't believe in a lot of fantasy stuff. We just went through Thanksgiving. Does anybody really know the story that Thanksgiving was not what people thought? It was one of the first dates. Thanksgiving was one of the first dates when the Pilgrims massacred 3 tribal nations. But it's like Columbus Day. It's like Santa Claus. It's like Easter, And then we get older, we start learning what some of these dates really mean and some of the circumstances behind these things compared to what we've been misled to. It's like we got a lot of states that are getting away from Columbus Day because North America technically ain't part of the 48 states, technically. North America, South America, 2 different countries. They're not under the same roof, and South America got their name and what year. So you do research, figure this stuff out, folks. We get a lot of information out to you, too, but we want you to start figuring this stuff out for yourself, too. Because once you start opening your mind and start seeing the glowing in your own mind, that really helps when you open your mind and you see the real truth. You can't be afraid of shadows because it's too bright to see shadows. So, these are a lot of things that are happening. We got a lot of things that are working. And when you got public employees that are standing up in your community, and that's the other thing, too, we'd like to start doing a deal on that, letting out public employees who are standing up for their community, protecting them. And that means protecting their oath, the right to go to work without being harassed or shot for not having the corporation license. We can reduce crime overnight. Psychological problems. Psychiatry, we could end up reducing that 60% in 30 to 60 days. So long as that the public employees ain't harassing people under the name of democracy. I'll go doing a Republican form of government, putting back a still responsibility of respect. Yeah, responsibility of respect. What an interesting thought. Doesn't anybody think about these things? Our fathers did, but we didn't pay attention to a lot of that stuff when we grew up. Just like the kids today, they don't pay attention to growing up to a lot of things around them. But then when they get older, they start putting things together just like we all have done ourselves. So, I'm looking at tomorrow night, and the 14th Amendment was never ratified. We've got more stuff. The 13th was ratified, and it had to do with judges and attorneys and elections and public servants. So, that was the last one that could have been ratified. The last time that a quorum was actually formed under the Constitution. So that is a point where a quorum cannot be formed today, especially with the so-called 50 states. Anybody, they can't pull out of the union. They can't do nothing so long as under the corporation. And then the other one, the only other way they can do that has to be 3/4 of majority of the entire 48 states amongst everyone. Because when they start trying to go like with the 11th Amendment dealing with the states, state has rights to protect the corporation, but the state has a constitutional duty to the lawful bloodline first. And see, that's the one thing with these videos and stuff bringing it out, and you watch these attorneys and these educators bringing stuff out, it makes you wonder. And then you have to look at these men and women, their sponsors, and how they're making it. Who's paying them? Who's the structure of their sponsors? So, it is one of those things that we have to work together on this, and we can make these things happen, and it is happening. But put your affidavits together. Claim your bloodline. You can go on new.org and track it. Go read what I put in the newspapers if you want. Utilize anything you want off of it. Remember, you are a responsible adult. You are responsible for your own actions. But we don't mind sharing ideas or giving another man or woman some educational knowledge that they may not have. But we want to be successful just like you want to be successful in freedom. And when you're successful in freedom and you don't have to worry about looking over your shoulder and living in fear, that's the winning part. When you can go and downtown, wherever, and you don't have to worry about whatever's going on around you because you're not living in fear, but you know your surroundings. You pay attention to the responsibilities of what those around you are doing. So that's the beauty of what we're living today. And it is changing, but we need to do more. And we need to get some of these Democrats, especially Bernie Sanders, out. I can't believe how he keeps getting voted in and how he's still around when he keeps going in trying to put this communist stuff. I've watched some of his new videos compared to even his old videos. Even some of the stuff 20 years ago and some of the stuff he's coming with today, it's so similar to Rome and Nazi Germany. It's scary. You just got to really listen to the words he's using. It might not sound that way to you, but you got to listen to exactly the words the man is speaking. Don't think about it. Don't interpret the words. Listen to the words he is actually speaking. It starts scaring you. You know, I mean, I watched a bit today with Jim Carrey going on socialized medicine from Canada. Okay, yeah, we actually in the United States we do have socialized medicine. Technically, we've had it for hundreds of years. Technically, and it wasn't until I believe it was Nixon when he was president. He dropped the medical structure and made it so hospitals could privatize themselves. And if you really want some more facts on that, ask Congressman Ron Paul. Anybody who knows anything of taxes and the history of the fire department, police departments, and all this stuff before they became private corporation with the what they call the legal terminology and the backing of religion, God, Christ, to murder, rape, and rob and pillage children, women, and men. I mean, we've already had this stuff in place. It's reading what the laws are that were put in place before they started putting all this administration stuff into us, and we started losing reality because everybody got to, I need a bigger house than you do. I need a bigger car than you do. I need, the $2,000 fishing pole instead of the $500 one that works just as good. We get greedy. Everybody comes all of a sudden, we want to carry a Gucci bag instead of just having deer hide on our skin, and we know that it lasts a long time, and we don't have to worry about somebody's, paying the privilege for somebody's name. Because you already fed yourself from the hide. So that is the one thing that, we need to get back. We need to get our forests so we can get these forests stopping to cut down. Because they're altering our forest and our medicine out there. Because when this stuff really starts hitting down the road, where they're talking about dealing with possibly some of the stuff with the rest of the country, and that's why we need the borders up, the walls up, because the famine and disease, they're talking, and it's already happening in other countries. Let's not bring it to ours. Because once that happens, we're done. And we're the only country in the world that has a structure called the Constitution and Treaties that gives us rights, not privilege, even in religion. And that's the one thing, too. Religion is a privilege in this country. Religion is not to control our House and Senate. It's not to control anything but in your own house or whatever your belief of religion. My religion, I believe in the Constitution. I don't believe in fairy tale religions. Constitution is the only thing that gives man, woman, and child their rights. Nothing else does, beside the treaties. The treaties and the Constitution combined, that's where we've got our freedom. If we lose that, we're all done for, and that would even affect the world. So we are seeing the changes, and that's the one thing that we've got to keep helping the changes. So when you're seeing these criminal things, and you're seeing this, and you know, even though I hate cell phones or whatever, you see that stuff, videotape it. Videotape courtrooms. Get that stuff up, because a judge can't say you can't do that, because if the courtroom's private, he has to put it in writing, and then that's a violation of law right there, because the courtroom cannot be private unless he admits that the corporation courtroom under tribunal law. Military tribunal. Otherwise, courtroom's public. He can't tell you. He can't record. And if he does tell you it's a tribunal courtroom, you have no business being there anyways. Case dismissed. Unless you're in the military. That's the only way that could have effect, if you are in the military. Otherwise, they'll try any other way they can get to you. But if you believe that stuff without doing the research and protecting yourself, that's the problem. That's why I keep pushing. And I've done my paperwork. I got a new affidavit I'm getting ready to put out on my rights coming up. And you have to keep doing this stuff, bringing it up. And then you educate the elected and public servants when you do it, and others when you do this stuff. Because I'm not the only one that's doing this like I'm doing it. And, you know, I mean, and some of you know it, and some of you were, you know, along with me. We've talked about how we're doing it, and, you know, combination and throwing education back and forth with each other, how we're going to do the next one. So, anyhow, with that, I would like to hit the Ronald Reagan tape, and then I want to open up the floor.
Stop to think how unique we really are. In the eyes of many in the world, this every 4-year ceremony we accept as normal is nothing less than a miracle. Mr. President, I want our fellow citizens to know how much you did to carry on this tradition. By your gracious cooperation in the transition process, you have shown a watching world that we are a united people, pledged to maintaining a political system which guarantees individual liberty to a greater degree than any other. And I thank you and your people for all your help in maintaining the continuity which is the bulwark of our republic. From time to time, we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule, that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people. Well, if no one among us is capable of governing himself, then who among us has the capacity to govern someone else? So as we begin, let us take inventory. We are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. And this makes us special among the nations of the earth. Our government has no power except that granted it by the people. It is time to check and reverse the growth of government, which shows signs of having grown beyond the consent of the governed. It is my intention to curb the size and influence of the federal establishment and to demand recognition of the distinction between the powers granted to the federal government and those reserved to the states or to the people. All of us need to be reminded that the federal government did not create the states. The states created the federal government. Now, so there will be no misunderstanding, it's not my intention to do away with government. It is rather to make it work with us, not over us, to stand by our side, not ride on our back. Government can and must provide opportunity, not smother it. Foster productivity, not stifle it. If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleash the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. It is no coincidence that our present troubles parallel and are proportionate to the intervention and intrusion in our lives that result from unnecessary and excessive growth of government. It is time for us to realize that we're too great a nation to limit ourselves to small dreams. We're not, as some would have us believe, doomed to an inevitable decline. I do not believe in a fate that will fall on us no matter what we do. I do believe in a fate that will fall on us if we do nothing. So with all the creative energy at our command, let us begin an era of national renewal. Let us renew our determination, our courage, and our strength. And let us renew our faith and our hope. We have every right to dream heroic dreams. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. On the eve of our struggle for independence, a man who might have been one of the greatest among the founding fathers, Dr. Joseph Warren, president of the Massachusetts Congress, said to his fellow Americans, "Our country is in danger, but not to be despaired of. On you depend the fortunes of America. You are to decide the important question upon which rests the happiness and the liberty of millions yet unborn. Act worthy of yourselves." As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. Our forbearance should never be misunderstood. Our reluctance for conflict should not be misjudged as a failure of will. When action is required to preserve our national security, we will act. We will maintain sufficient strength to prevail if need be, knowing that if we do so, we have the best chance of never having to use that strength. Above all, we must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. Beyond those monuments to heroism is the Potomac River, and on the far shore, the sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David. They add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, "My Pledge," he had written these words: "America must win this war. Therefore, I will work I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone. The crisis we're facing today does not require of us the kind of sacrifice that Martin Treptow and so many thousands of others were called upon to make. It does require, however, our best effort and our willingness to believe in ourselves and to believe in our capacity to perform great deeds, to believe that together we can and will resolve the problems which now confront us. And after all, why shouldn't we believe that? We are Americans.
All participants are unmuted.
Okay, I appreciate that. And we're going to go in here, but I want people to realize one thing he's bringing up, point. When you look at the history, and we've been fighting this, and every generation we get more and more knowledge. We went through the knowledge with the craziness of, these wars, and then we found out some of these wars were basically programmed by the banks and different politicians. So when it comes to that, like I've been suggesting to people, and they're starting to get it, and they're realizing it, you have to sue the board members. You have to go after the family bloodline of these corporations that did this to ourselves. So once you start doing that and you file your oath of office or you file your paperwork just claiming either you're lawful, legal, or if you are still elected a public servant, filing the claim because you have to under, 1938 Foreign Administration Registration Act. And people say it doesn't matter. I hate to tell you, folks, and all you other people, when somebody tells you that, quit listening to these idiots. Men and women are not in the newspapers today going to prison, but there's a lot of men and women going to prison who have not registered, and including attorneys. Attorneys is a practice of fraud. There's no license to be an attorney. Anybody can be an attorney so long as you know the law. Anybody can be a lawyer so long as you know, not the law. It's called statute, codes, and administrative rules. Because technically, if you do the real structure and law, the law is the Constitution and the treaties. So anyhow, I'm going to back up and open the floor and see if anybody would like to add anything.
Yeah, may I?
No, the floor is yours. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I was wondering what Supreme Court done away with the 14th Amendment. What case?
Oh, what case? It was never ratified.
Well, if it's never ratified.
Yeah, it was absolutely never ratified.
Why are the private courts using it continually every day? I don't know how many times over the many years.
Right. They're getting away with it under Admiralty Administrative Tribunal courts of an Article I court. So when people go in, they are submitting themselves to that court without standing up for their constitutional rights.
Well, flat out, I'm going to tell you, when you're in that courtroom and that judge is processing your case then under the 14th Amendment, you're going to lose, and you're going to, the private court's going to have their way because you went along with the 14th Amendment.
By walking into that courtroom.
Well, sometimes you have to.
Well, yeah, but usually you want to file before you get there, but we know that. Go ahead.
Yeah, you may be handcuffed.
Yeah, or assaulted, yeah.
But the point is, until you got it certified from Congress, the legislature, attorney generals, or someone, the 14th Amendment still stands as if it is ratified.
As administrative rule, yeah.
I've never seen anywhere where it's certified, where anyone has ever certified it, that it's not in full force and effect.
Right. And that's one thing that, you know, we can start putting together something for us to try to do, you know, get that certified through the Secretary of State or something to that. That would actually be a deal. I'll try to get something into Secretary of State Dennison on it. That would be interesting to see what kind of response he would give us.
Yeah, but it needs done. Otherwise, you're going in with civil rights.
Yeah.
The presumption is you're a small C citizen.
Correct.
And most people have a terrible time overcoming it. The presumption, you have the 14th Amendment civil rights, but you do not have Constitution rights.
Well, and that's the one thing we need. I'm actually working on a template to what you're suggesting, so we can get it out there as many people as we can get, trying to get who can get it certified, and see what kind of letters back from even senators and congressmen of their responses, what they mean by it. Because we need to come up with that. Wouldn't that be fair?
Well, sure.
You know.
Until you have it certified from them, the 14th Amendment is still in good standing and full force and effect. The private courts are going to use the 14th Amendment against everyone, and you're not going to have your Constitution rights. You're going to have the civil rights. You can't challenge the taxes, the debt, as per the 14th Amendment says. You're the slave. The slave can't challenge the debt under the 14th Amendment. And that's why all these people that try to challenge the debt, IRS and different taxes, once in a while property tax, they lose. Some of them go to jail, some go to prison.
Well, I've succeeded on state and federal. I'm still working on the property. I've never even paid corporation businesses or even business license when I had my businesses.
Yep.
So the only one right now, once I can tackle this property tax issue, that's going to be the point of freedom for a lot of us. You know, some of them already got it, but you know, the thing is, when you get it, you know, you got to work with them, and you know, we got to protect each other on their employment as well as their servitude to us. And I think you have knowledge of what I'm referring to.
Oh yeah. Well, anyway, that's all I had to say regarding the 14th Amendment. Is until you have a Supreme Court case that says it's not ratified, or you have a document from Congress that says
I
it's
do
not
have
ratified.
that one. I do have the document from Congress. And that is on the website.
Well, that'd be a good document. I guess I don't have it. I know I've heard.
I thought I emailed that to you.
Well, I'll have to double check.
Okay, I'll have to double check too, because also too, I got 2 court cases, but I haven't had a chance to reference them back to confirm before I put them out, because I want to make sure they're legitimate before I put something out, because on this type of situation, I have the one from Congress on the 14th Amendment not being ratified. That's the same one that Donald Trump actually came out publicly stated and gave to the papers and press. So I know where that one came from. So, but I want to make sure that the court case, and there's one administrative was the Supreme Court going back to 1889. But I got to make, we want to make sure this is correct before we put out the other stuff. You know, but yeah, I got to make sure if you haven't got that one, I got to make sure you got that one, because I've been putting that out like crazy to a lot of people. And that's gone out to several people on that, because I got that from, you could sort of say somebody in Congress sent it to me. How I got it. So, and I figured if they sent it to me, it had to be real. Because of their position. So, and we do got people that are really starting to pay attention to the separation of the republic form of government versus a Republican government or a democracy government. Because we're supposed to be 100% Republic form. And as the original paperwork said, we are the United States for America. And then they changed it to of.
Yep. True.
So, I mean, and this is the whole point, folks, is knowing what the real history is, teaching the kids what, why, and how the words changed, and how administratively it was done. And if you use administrative rules, like going in and using the Gold Fringe flag or maritime or admiralty courts, you know, and if you don't file, and if you're filing your paperwork, always, I don't care if it's a local city hall, ask for their filing and their birth certificate registration on their filing to prove that their oath of office is a real oath of office to the Constitution, not just supporting. I can support anything. I can put a stick out there and support the cat on the end of the stick.
Yep, true.
But, you have to know either you took an oath to defend the Constitution, and if you took an oath to support it, who cares? And I know, I have been elected in public official, and I know what it says. I have signed those papers as being an actual elected public servant. So it's knowing what the forms mean that they're putting out, what the lawful and legal differences are.
Yep, I agree.
You know, and that's the point. People don't realize the wording. Wording is the biggest issues. That's why when I got a lot of stuff going out to these other groups now, they're asking for so much information I'm getting out. The main thing is, please do not interpret stuff. Read the wording.
And the art of words.
Yes, the art of words, yes. Don't interpret it. Go ahead.
Yep. No, I'm done. You go ahead.
Well, it's not a Bible or a book of story you're reading. You're reading that men and women lost their lives to put together this foundation, so it has to matter one way or the other. There's no middle line. Life and death has no middle line. And trust me, I know. I've been actually dead a few times. I was just in last July. I spent 6.5 days dying and on life support again. So it's not, you have to read what the words mean. That's why you got to watch a movie called Interstate 60. It'll walk you through your court system or your admiralty court system. You know, we do recommend movies and stuff like this. We're going to start doing some other stuff here coming New Year's. And I'm thinking about, if I can do this, I got to do this in the next few days. So I was thinking about doing a GoFundMe because I'd like to try to be up at the Capitol this year so I can really have some fun with them in public hearings. You know, over the bills and administrative rules and cost. Because this would be one hell of a year to go out there and have one hell of an entertainment time, because knowing the insides and the outsides of the circumstances of the corporation as well as I do now, that would be one hell of an educational, entertaining experience for everybody. You know, that really would be. Because, and also, too, don't forget the CAFR reports. Walter Bruin, if you never watched his stuff, look him up, read the CAFR reports. You know, we're getting out the stuff with Rob Reiner, the United States Constitutional Radio Show. You know, you've got to start paying attention what others are doing, and the whole point is putting this writing in. Claim who you are. People say, well, it doesn't matter. Why do I have to claim who I am? Well, when you go to court, if you don't know who you are when you go to court, if you're not legal or lawful, what court are you going into, and how do you expect the judge to respond to you? And remember, a corporation judge is a corporation judge. The judge has no authority in the courtroom. The only one that technically has authority in the courtroom is a jury of 12 men and women. The judge is the mediator, and so-called sheriff, or technically he's not sheriff, it's the federal marshal, is the one who keeps the courtroom at bay and keeps it flowing, running, and so that way nothing disastrous happens. Because it was always a marshal before the sheriffs came in existence in 1887. Oh, when the bar came into existence. Oh, there's a good movie, Blazing Saddles. And if you actually pay attention to what they talk about in Blazing Saddles, the year the marshal or the year of the sheriff and the black sheriff and with Gene Wilder and I can't remember the other actor's name. The Blazing Saddles explains a lot of your Constitution in that movie that you don't get if you really watch it. It really pays attention to a lot of stuff. So, anybody else like that? Anything this evening?
Hey, Ed.
Yep.
How can Trump declare us under martial law even though we've been under martial law since Abraham Lincoln?
Okay. That's a good question. Okay. You're asking, how is he able to declare martial law? He's declaring martial law on citizens. Okay? The only one who could be under martial law is elected and public employees, church members, and corporations, citizens. Natives cannot be under corporation administrative law. See, that's the whole point of filing your rights, knowing you are. Because I've walked through different things where I've been involved, and things where areas were shut down and stuff, and I just walked through. It's knowing who you are, what you are, and why you are. So when he's doing martial law, like right now, what he's doing on the border, you are familiar with that, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay, so when he's doing that, you have to know who you are, and that's the one thing that even though some of these military and some of these men and women around the country, they don't know who you are going down to the border yourself, even though that you live near the area. Let's say if you live near the area, you have to sit there and talk to these people. You have to let them know who you are around the area so they get to know who they don't have to look over their shoulders or be afraid of. You know, it is one of those circumstances. We are living that reality right now today. It is very similar to what happened in Germany. You know, it's very similar. You know, so, and we're technically not under martial law because even Nixon was the one who lifted martial law and made sure that they could basically, there was an executive order that he put in that it was all a fraud anyways, martial law. They couldn't do it to the people. They could only do it to the corporation members under maritime law. And that was Nixon. I don't remember. I have that somewhere, but if I find it in the files, I'll get that up again because I know it was Nixon who clarified that. That was before he pardoned Ford. It's amazing how these guys pardon each other. I mean, I guess the California governor just pardoned a public employee who murdered so many people. So it is interesting. So what else is on your mind? You got anything else on that one? Did I answer your question or?
Answered my question.
Okay. So I know that should be up on the internet too. And eventually, hopefully, because I'm trying to get everything. We're trying to put all this stuff up on our new.Oregon tracker site, so we're trying to get more and more information up there all the time. But, you know, we have to thank the producer on a lot of this stuff because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be doing this stuff. So we thank him. So anybody else would like to add something? No further. Then tomorrow night we're going to really get into the 14th Amendment. I got to make sure the producer has it. I got to double check with him after we get done tonight. I'll make sure he gets the email. That way he has the 14th Amendment from Congress, from the facts and that circumstances. We want to make sure it's run on the YouTube channel and the links so people can actually see it, and we'll get the links out to everybody tomorrow. Everybody, and if you want the 14th Amendment and the other stuff I got on that, email me tonight. I'll make sure you have that before tomorrow's talk show. And yes, I already know that for 2 people right now, and you will have them either not tonight, you'll have them in the morning. So, any other questions tonight or any other thoughts? Nothing? Okay. Well, with that, we'll call it an evening, and may the Great Spirit and Mother Earth provide for you and give you life, and may the Creator protect us all.
Thank you, Ed. You've been watching Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. Today is Saturday, November 24th, 2018. And on a side note, which is kind of what everybody's talking about, if you look on the main page of NewOregonTrackers.com, right there on the front page should be Congress says 14th unconstitutional. There's a button there that should have all that information that I was given. So, if you want to go look at it, go ahead and look at it. It's actually a congressional record, as far as I know. So, with that, thank you very much, and we'll catch you tomorrow for the make-believe rules and regulations that the make-believe corporations have put into effect and made everybody believe in the make-believe. It's nothing but tinsel-tale. It's lies. It's 5-year-olds playing around saying, I'm more powerful, I have a shield kind of crap. It's fantasy. So, with that, we'll see you tomorrow.